It is the Resistance Report for March 8th, 2017. Good evening. First of all, happy International Women's Day. Donald Trump responded to International Women's Day this morning with a tweet that said, "I have tremendous respect for women." Well, that's interesting because every time over the last several years when Donald Trump has gotten into trouble because he's shown lack of respect for women, he responds by saying, "I have tremendous respect for women." That is his standard response. Not only is that kind of a defensive response, but also it centers on whom? Donald Trump. And it centers on the issue of respect. In fact, if you didn't know Donald Trump, you might say that somebody who kept on saying the same thing about "I have respect for women" may have a problem with regard to respect for women, and also might be a little bit narcissistic in terms of thinking that it's all about him and all about respect. But of course, that's what we've come to expect from Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Republican and Trump so-called American Health Care Act, so that's what they're calling it, the substitute, they say, for the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, is running into harder and harder oceans, waves coming against it. Today, physician groups and hospital groups, even the American Medical Association, attacked the Republican plan as being woefully insufficient. It will not cover nearly enough Americans. It will not provide Americans with nearly enough of a subsidy so that they can afford health insurance for themselves. And meanwhile, the right wing of the Congressional Republican Party also came out against the American Health Care Act today in full force. The Koch brothers Political Front, as well as Freedom Works and Heritage Action, they are all saying that it goes too far. It provides too much benefit. I mean, even though it only goes about 25% of the way toward the kind of coverage that people had under the Affordable Care Act, which was not even sufficient for covering every American, nevertheless, the right-wing groups are saying it goes too far. They want to just repeal the Affordable Care Act altogether. They don't want to replace it. And so we have here the American Medical Association and the establishment physicians and also the hospitals and all the entire healthcare industry saying you're not going to cover enough people. And meanwhile, the right wing says you're going to cover too many. And what the right wing is really saying, let's be clear about what they really want. What they really are after is they want to get rid of the taxes on the wealthy that are in the Affordable Care Act. That is their ultimate goal. The top 1/10 of 1%, the richest 1/10 of 1% of Americans, well, they will get, if the Affordable Care Act is repealed and if even the Republican so-called replacement is put in, the top 1/10 of 1% will get an annual tax cut of almost $200,000 a year. They are the patrons of the Republican Party. They are the ones who are most upset about the Affordable Care Act from the beginning. And so that is what certainly the right-wing Republicans want, but the rest of the Republican Party wants it too, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to repeal that funding. That's a major reason why there's not enough funding there to cover people who had been covered under the Affordable Care Act. Now, when Democrats passed Obamacare in 2010, do you remember the hollering from the Republican Party about Democrats jamming it through, ramming it through Congress without enough information? Well, there were 6 months of reports and hearings and Congressional Budget Office data. Now, in 2 days, Republicans are already marking up the bill that they officially launched just 48 hours ago. They don't have any information. They haven't put out any information about cost or coverage. And when it comes to the Congressional Budget Office that does this kind of analysis, what does the White House say? Well, Sean Spicer said, if you're looking at the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, for accuracy, you're looking at the wrong place. Well, Sean, where are you going to get accuracy? Where do you get nonpartisan accuracy if not the Congressional Budget Office? Do you expect that we're going to get nonpartisan accuracy from the Office of Management and Budget in the White House? Sean? Really? Talk about being rammed and railroaded without any discussion or any hearings. That's exactly what the Republicans are doing. They want to vote on this as fast as possible because they want to repeal, not replace, the Affordable Care Act. Now, let me give you an update on another related issue, and that is the grounds for impeaching Donald Trump. By my count, we have at least 4 grounds right now for impeaching him. Number 1, oh, and by the way, if you want to take out your handy-dandy little copy of your Constitution of the United States, I keep on urging you to get this in paperback. Look, very, in big print, very large print, and you can underline your favorite passages. I actually put it in yellow. Number 1, in taking the oath of office, a president promises to faithfully execute the laws and the Constitution of the United States. And this is right there in Article 2, Section 2. Well, Donald Trump, on Saturday, accused his predecessor of committing an impeachable offense, doing an illegal wiretap on Donald Trump during the election. When a president accuses another president of an impeachable offense and provides absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and then when people ask him for the evidence, he calls for an investigation. That seems to be is not faithfully executing the laws of the United States. In fact, it's playing fast and loose with the laws and the Constitution of the United States. So there you have number 1 ground for impeaching Donald Trump. A second ground for impeaching Donald Trump is what he's done to the First Amendment. Here again, go to your handy-dandy guide. The Constitution says that there shall be no law barring, respecting any establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And it is right in the First Amendment to the Constitution. Well, Donald Trump has now twice initiated a Muslim ban. He says it's not a Muslim ban, but we know it is a Muslim ban. It only applies to 6 predominantly Muslim countries, and he told his assistant, Rudy Giuliani, that that's exactly what he was going to do. A ban on Muslims that violates the Constitution. There's a third reason. Donald Trump, in saying that the press is the enemy of the people, and then turning around and saying he's only going to have a press conference and invite to press conferences only press outlets, media outlets that have been friendly to him, that have not criticized him, that is also a violation of the Constitution, because also right here in the First Amendment, there is a provision for the free exercise of the press. Nothing can be done to abridge the freedom of the press. If you're saying to the press you can't even have attendance at a press conference if you criticize the president, that is abridging the freedom of the press. That violates the First Amendment to the Constitution, the third impeachable offense. The fourth impeachable offense that I have counted, actually, we're on our way to finding out about this. We don't know everything. Just put this, an asterisk next to this one. Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution defines treason against the United States as adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. We don't know yet, but the evidence is mounting that Donald Trump actually did provide aid and comfort, adhering to the largest country, most powerful country that has nuclear warheads aimed at the United States, and that is Russia. But I want to spend a little bit of time on the fifth ground for impeaching Donald Trump, and that is Article 1, Section 9. It's called the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. It stands for a very simple proposition, and that is, in Article 1, Section 9, no official of the government can take anything of value from a foreign government. It's put in there to avoid a conflict of interest, an obvious conflict of interest, because if you can take things of value from a foreign government, then you are going to be corrupted by that foreign government. That's why it's in there in the Constitution. Well, we know that Donald Trump has this fancy hotel called the Trump International Hotel right on Pennsylvania Avenue, and he's been pushing in all sorts of ways foreign dignitaries and delegations to stay at the Trump International Hotel, and he profits from that directly. He is the person who owns the Trump International Hotel along with his family. But there's something else, and it happened today. China has just granted preliminary approval for 38 new Trump trademarks in China. Now, this paves the way for Trump to develop a host of branded Trump businesses in China, including hotels and resorts and spas and restaurants and insurance companies and finance companies and real estate companies and restaurants, and they're all lined up, and they all are going to have a big Trump label on them, and Trump is going to pocket a lot of money. 35 of these trademarks are in the name of not just the Trump organization, but their name of Donald J. Trump, personally. The other 3 are under DTM Operations LLC, of which Donald J. Trump owns 100%. Now, we also know that Donald Trump did accede to China's wish that he embrace China's one China policy and not recognize Taiwan. You remember that little imbroglio at the beginning there when he was president-elect, when he called the president of Taiwan? Well, the Chinese were upset, and he relented, and he gave the Chinese what they want. Ethics lawyers across the political spectrum are looking at what China did today and are aghast. They are saying that it could very well violate the Constitution's prohibition on emoluments. Dan Plain, who is director of Simone IP Services, which is a Hong Kong intellectual property company, and he knows about how difficult it is to get a trademark agreement through China. He said, for all these marks to sail through so quickly and cleanly with no similar marks, no identical marks, no issues with specifications, boy, he said, is that weird? Weird? Yes, it is weird unless you look at what Donald Trump gave away to China to get that and what China thinks he's going to continue to give China in the future. Richard Painter, who served as chief ethics officer for the George W. Bush administration, said the volume of these new approvals, these trademark approvals today by the Chinese should raise red flags. With so many trademarks being granted over such a short period of time, the question has to arise as to whether there's an accommodation in at least some of them. An accommodation, that it means a deal, the art of the deal. My friends, the question is no longer whether there are grounds to impeach Donald Trump. That's not the issue. The issue now is whether there is the political will to impeach Donald Trump. And as you know, you Constitution watchers, just go to your little handy-dandy Constitution. Articles of impeachment have got to begin. A bill of impeachment has got to begin in the House of Representatives. You're not going to get it with Republicans in control of the House of Representatives, at least not now. And so, once again, it comes back to flipping the House of Representatives and the Senate in 2018. Now, as I've said before, there may be some Republicans with scruples and courage who would vote in favor of articles of impeachment, and I'm not suggesting that we be, all of us, so partisan that we only vote for Democrats. Any Republican who has backbone, let's support him or her as well. But let's be realistic about all this. I'm going to turn to your questions in a minute, but I just want to be very realistic. We cannot normalize what Donald Trump is doing to the United States. We cannot say this is just partisanship. This is just a very conservative Republican. No, Donald Trump is playing fast and loose with our democracy. His statement Saturday morning alleging that Barack Obama had committed an impeachable offense, calling his predecessor sick, calling for an investigation, refusing to acknowledge the legitimacy of the intelligence agency's conclusion that, in fact, Russian operatives did interfere in the 2016 election in favor of Donald Trump. And also the increasing evidence we have about what Trump has done and his associates have done with regard to Russia and the Russian connections and the conflicts of interest and how he has treated the press and how he has treated courts that he disagrees with. In all these respects, we are not dealing with normalcy. And we must not normalize this. This is a clear and present danger to our democracy. Now your questions. Chris Reap, has there been any progress on the emoluments clause for number 45, that is for Trump? Is the investigation continuing? Yes, there is a lawsuit. The lawsuit is being brought by the ethics officers of both the Obama and the George W. Bush administration, along with several others. We don't know yet, because there's been no ruling by the courts as to whether they have standing to bring this case. We'll find out, hopefully, shortly. I will be among the first to let you know. Dominic Berkeley, is there a way to hold the Republicans in Congress accountable for ignoring all of these grounds for impeachment? Dominic, there is a way to hold them accountable. It's called voting them out. Mark Tanney, how do we motivate people to rally around the issue of Republicans' failure to properly investigate the possibility of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign? Well, Mark, I think this is where the press has to take some responsibility and be accountable. Instead of just simply looking at the scandal of the day or the outrage of the day, we've got to count on our press to investigate. I hope right now, I don't have any evidence to back up this hope, but I hope that there are investigative journalists like Woodward and Bernstein did with regard to Watergate, who are putting this case together for the public. And maybe they will be the recipients of leaks. I'm not suggesting anybody leak, but maybe they will also be the recipients of leaks from the intelligence agencies. Next question. Ellie Ormsby, is there a legal precedent in the event that Trump is impeached that the legislation put in place under him would be rendered invalid? Ellie, there is no legal precedent for that. That is, the assumption, even if a president is impeached, is that everything he did and signed into law before that is valid, because obviously the other branches of government are also involved, or even an executive order is presumed to be valid, which is a very good argument, I think, for not moving forward with certain critical issues like the Gorsuch nomination until we have evidence, we have proof that Donald Trump is the legitimate president. Jack Like, please explain the role of NAFTA with regards to jobs lost in the steel industry. Some are claiming that unions are to blame for the export of U.S. jobs because competitive markets pricing would not be met with high wages here. Hence, unions are a bad thing, and right-to-work laws may help make the U.S. more competitive. Jack, let me just say this. We can have a lot of jobs here in the United States if they're very low-paying jobs. In other words, there is no secret to creating a lot of jobs that pay very, very little. If that's our goal, that's not an appropriate goal. The goal should be many jobs that are high-paying jobs. The way we get high-paying jobs, one of the ways is we have unions who are demanding a share of the gains from productivity improvements. Now, this economy is not a bad economy. In terms of the economic data overall, we are very productive, and we are about twice the size that we were in 1980 as an economy overall. The problem is most people have not had any of the benefits of that growth. Most people who used to be union workers, or are union workers, or blue-collar workers, or working class people, or poor people, or Trump supporters, they didn't get any of the benefits of that growth. And as a result of that, the jobs that are available are lousy jobs. They don't pay very much. And so when Donald Trump only talks about jobs, he's missing a big part of the equation. When people say we want right-to-work laws because we don't want unions, because we don't want unions to be interfering with job creation, they're missing half of the equation. And half of the equation is good jobs. What's the point of having all these jobs if they're lousy jobs? 2 more questions. Fran Carino, is Jeff Sessions really going to stay in office? I can't believe he doesn't have to resign. It's clear as day he perjured himself. Well, Fran, it's clear as day to me he perjured himself because he swore under oath when he was asked twice by 2 separate senators, one in writing and one actually at the hearing himself, at the hearing itself, did he have any connection with Russia, or did he know of any connections between Trump campaign officials and Russia? And he said no. And he even went out of his way with one senator to answer a question that was not even asked. He said, I did not have any connection or contact with any Russians. Now, as I've said before in our little broadcast here, Jeff Sessions could have answered by saying, well, I did contact the Russian ambassador, but that really is not at issue here because you're more concerned about any issues I might have talked about with the Russian ambassador about the Trump campaign. But he didn't say that. He didn't qualify that. He just said no, he had no contacts. And then it comes out he did have 2 meetings with the Russian ambassador. Now, that to me, that is perjury. How could it not be perjury? What there needs to be right now is an inquiry initiated on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, by Democrats and by Republicans who have scruples into that particular question of perjury. The committee itself, the Senate Judiciary Committee, in front of which Jeff Sessions perjured himself, ought to be making that inquiry right now. The fact that it's not means that the Democrats on that committee presumably are being squelched. This goes back to a fundamental issue here, and that is, are we a nation of laws, or are we a nation of people who are very powerful, who call the shots despite the law? And that is the central issue in the Trump administration with regard to everything that I have been talking about. Final question. From Philip Rourke, how can we ensure success in the 2018 midterms? Will gerrymandering ruin our chances? Philip, there is no assurance of success. In fact, it's going to be a very hard thing to pull off, given the enormous majority that the Republicans have in the House right now, and also the fact that more Democratic senatorial seats are going to be up in 2018 than Republican seats. Nevertheless, if you and I and everybody you know works hard, if we make this the kind of uprising that we have already begun to create in this country, then the Republicans don't stand a chance. Because who is it who is motivated? Who is it who is energized? Who is mobilized now against what's happening, against the extraordinary abuses of power, starting right with Donald Trump, the undermining of our democracy, the abrogation of rights there in the Constitution, And on top of that, the movement against environmental protection, against worker protection, labor protections, against the Affordable Care Act itself. Working people who voted for Donald Trump, I hope, over the next year and a half or 2 years leading up to 2018, you understand the bad deal you got. It was a bait and switch operation by one of America's biggest con artists called Donald J. Trump. You ought to be involved in the resistance as well. And it's not just a resistance to Trump now, it is a movement to take back our democracy and ultimately our economy for the people. That's what 2018 is going to be all about. One other point, 2018 starts right now. So don't think that you just wait to vote in 2018. No, get involved now in politics, in primary contests. Find out if you're Republican, registered Republican, find out who is running against the person who is a Trump backer in Congress. If, in fact, your Republican is backing Trump, and almost every Republican is, find out who's running against him or her. And if you are an independent, maybe you want to become a registered Republican so you can actually support in the Republican primary. If it is a safe Republican district, maybe you want to support that Republican insurgent who is going to take on Trump. And if you're a Democrat, find out who is running. Maybe run yourself so that we have people in there who have the backbone to stand up to this despotism. And it is despotism. And if you're an independent, fine, but you might think about the fact that there are very, very few swing seats. There are very few members of Congress, districts in Congress, that could go either way in 2018. And so if you're an independent, you might consider registering with one of the parties for the sake of having a more active role over the next 2 years. Whoever you are, I want to put in a plug again for indivisibleguide.com, because it is a vehicle for getting together with others. I want to also put in a plug for sisterdistricts.com, because that's a vehicle for finding where there are purple districts where you, if you are in a blue district, you could help. There's something also called Lean Left. I want to find out more about that. But you can be involved. You should be involved. You must be involved. That ends the resistance report for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow.